good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Rich Clark and A Guide to the Right Path. Now, this week I've been talking about the negative mindset. I've done part 1, I've done part 2, and I've done part 3. Now, usually I only do part 3s of anything, but I'm going to do a part 4. And I'm going to talk about a technique which is actually from an old philosopher, sociologist, and so forth called Hegel. And he was German, and this is called and what we're going to talk about is the Hegelian dialectic. So what is this? What is this idea? And it's a solution to many arguments and changing the negative mindset. So the Hegelian dialectic is a philosophical framework developed by Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel. So Hegel, again, most of this idea of psychotherapy was all from the German school of thought. And with Hegel, he posits this idea and realities evolve through a process of thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, leading to a higher level of understanding of a new state of affairs. So I'm going to explain what this is and how this can work. And it's actually something many people need to start using instead of having confirmation bias or victimhood mentality. So here's a more detailed explanation. So a thesis. So we hear about thesis in academia, but this is the initial idea, proposition, or a state of being. So the thesis is actually a subject. So we can say, let's look at this specific subject, and that's what it is. Now, the antithesis is a contradictory or opposing idea, proposition, or state of being that challenges the thesis. This is done in academia quite a lot. It used to be anyway. Academia sort of changed a lot. It's gone to become very over self-aware and too much not working with the real world. But that's the idea of it. So the antithesis will go against the thesis. And then within that, the synthesis, this is a higher level of understanding or a new idea that emerges from the conflict between the thesis and antithesis. So this is the idea. So if someone's got an argument of one opinion, then the antithesis will battle that, and then they'll come up with a consensus of a new idea. So, and then from this is Hegel's view. Was Hegel believed that this dialectic process is fundamental to the development of knowledge and history, and through the clash of opposing forces, a higher level of understanding or a better state of affairs can emerge. Now, this also works very much in therapy because we have the thesis is the client or the person who has an idea of what they believe in, and the antithesis will be myself going, this is only what yours in your head. This is not actually what is true. This is not actually how things are. And the synthesis is actually really is the reframing of the mind for the client to then go on to a higher level of understanding to move on and not be so bogged down in its original thesis. So another example of that we can do as an example is consider the concept of being. So the being is who you are as a person, as a human being. Hegel would argue that the being cannot be understood without also considering its opposite, which is nothing. So, this goes into like the idea of Buddhism and Hinduism and so forth. And there's a synthesis, the two leads to a deeper understanding of reality. So the idea of some people would see the being of who we are, what we react to, and so forth, and the nothing would mean that we are like a speck of dust. We have no meaning, which obviously in the bigger scheme of things we do. So, and then from this, we also get is Hegel used the term Afroheiben, which is Afroheiben. So it's a German technique, and it's to describe the activity of overcoming the negative. So this is why it's very good about the negative mindset, because it's when it can be translated as subulation or overcoming to conceive of the working of the dialectic. So the idea of this, of Hegel's idea of overcoming negative mindset or overcoming a negative thought pattern, is actually based in a lot of psychotherapy. And roughly the term indicates preserving the true portion of an idea, thing, society, ideal, and so forth, while moving beyond its limitations. And this is the thing. So when we hear an idea or we hear someone has an argument about something, that thesis doesn't mean it's got no arguments or antithesis to it or antithesis to it. You've got to be able to challenge any idea, and then from that challenging idea is then people come up with a consensus to a synthesis of a higher level understanding. Without this, all we'll ever do is we'll get an echo chamber of people just saying their thesis, someone's antithesis, and then nothing ever changes. And if we look at the world, everything what progresses in the world has to go through a form of conflict. It's like any reaction. If you have an egg, right? If you cook an egg, if an egg is just normal, it's raw. You can't eat it, right? You could eat a raw egg. It's not very nice. The idea is then you go in the water, then you heat the water. So the egg will be the thesis. The antithesis is the water. then becoming thou, the water is there, and then the heating of the water becomes the synthesis, which then gives it a higher level. So now the egg becomes boiled. If it's in a frying pan, it becomes fried egg, and so forth. So it's the same thing with any ideas. So I think it's very important to understand about this in a very much a higher level idea of negative mindset. So negative mindset has to be challenged, and it has to be that the positive and a negative has to go to come up with a balanced viewpoint. If you don't have that positive and negative to do it, you can't. Not everything can be all positive. Not everything can all be negative. It has to be a balance, and then the concise and the synthesis of that, the high level understanding of that, works. So, if you ever want to talk to me about any of these ideas or these philosophical ideas, I can more than happy to help. But also, if you do have negative mindset traits, and you can look at part 1, part 2, and part 3 to actually look at that and explore that more, please go to www.richclark.net and book for a discovery call, and we can talk about that for half an hour to an hour before you even do a session. So until then, I shall speak to you soon.